What is it like being Jamaican in Australia? I'm Xavier Murphy, founder of Jamaicans.com. Today on Jamaicans to the World, we're going to talk to Samantha-Kaye Johnston, who is living in Western Australia. Hi, Samantha. How are you?
Hi, Xavier. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Good, good, good. Great coming on. I know the time zone, we're probably, what is it, 14 hours or 12?
14 hours. So it's almost 9 o'clock here, but that's all right. I'm a night owl. You
Oh,
can ask anybody. I'm always up in the night.
and I'm more of a morning owl. It hits 10 o'clock. I'm ready to go to bed.
No, I do my best work at night to the point where sometimes I'm in discussions with my boss to say, look, let's try to reverse the work day for me. And they've agreed. So
Wow,
it works well.
wow, that's great. So, which part of Jamaica are you from?
So originally from Sandy Bay, Hanover. So I've been there. I grew up in Hanover, lived there for most of my life. And then when I was about 18 or 19, thereabout, I went to study psychology, so my undergraduate degree at UWI. And that was a beautiful experience. I made a lot of friends and a lot of good experiences. So I lived in Kingston during those years on Rex Netterford Hall. And immediately following UWI, I worked in a call center. So I worked at Digicel. And let's just say it was a very interesting experience. It was a character building experience for me. I like to say character building. I remember I had a conversation with my friend and I said, it's so hard. It's just really hard because, you're aspiring to do research. Well, in my case, I'm aspiring to do research and applying to different universities. And so my friend said to me, just remember that it's a character building experience. It's never a bad day.
Well, that's great, and that's a great outlook on things. So, question: how did you end up in Australia?
Well, that's a very long story. I'll try to
Oh,
be short.
oh, that time.
So following from the story at Digicel, I knew I wanted to pursue my PhD studies, and that was really the goal for me. But before doing that, I think I was confused by the Australian system. The reason why I say that was because immediately following UWI, a 3-year program in psychology, I immediately applied directly to a PhD program here in Australia. But little did I know the educational systems are a bit different. So here in Australia, usually when students do a 4-year degree, which is an undergraduate degree, they can matriculate straight into a PhD program. Whereas in Jamaica, we do have 4-year programs, but the majority are 3-year programs. And I did a 3-year program. So they explained that to me and they said, you need to probably do a 4th year or in this case, a master's. And so I ended up in England doing a master's in education and then reapplied to the university in Australia. Actually, I was meant to go to Netherlands, but the package in Australia was a bit more attractive. And so I chose to study here. So I studied at Curtin University. I had an absolutely great time. I had great supervisors. I actually had contacted my supervisor back in 2012 when I initially planned to come to Australia. And I contacted him couple years later and I explained the situation and he said, yeah, I'm very happy to be your supervisor, and the rest is history. So
Oh,
I've been here for 5 years. So April of this year makes it 5 years, 5.5 years, thereabout.
wow. And you seem to totally enjoy it there, and you have got married there.
Yes, yeah, that's a beautiful Matthew Johnston. So yes, I always joke with him because I always said to him that I came to Australia to mind my business and then leave to go to Europe, to go back to Europe because I wanted to go to Netherlands. And we eventually went to the center together years after. But yeah, I met him when we were so in church, and we had a Bible study group. And so this is where we met, and then introduced to our respective families, and yeah, the rest is history, and we're married.
Well, you take him to Jamaica yet?
Yeah, so we actually got married in Jamaica. We got married in
Oh,
Jamaica. Yeah, so he claims that he lived in Jamaica, but I said that he didn't live in Jamaica just because he was there for about 2 months before the wedding. So I said you never lived in Jamaica before. So yeah, he was there, and his family came over for the wedding as well. And it was interesting because his grandmother, I think his grandmother is 80, 84. I don't remember. But she wanted to come to the wedding, but we weren't sure that she was coming. And the moment when I was about to walk down the aisle, she turned up. Nobody knew she was coming.
oh,
So she traveled to Jamaica from Sydney because Matthew he's originally from Sydney. And she traveled from Sydney, and she turned up right on time, and nobody knew that she was coming. And it was just a very funny story, how she arrived there, because she went to the travel agent and they said to her, you know are you sure you want to go to Jamaica, because usually the travel agents have to advise that the crime rate. And she said, yes, definitely, my grandson is getting married, so please book the ticket. So she was in America, and the plane was delayed. And what happened
wow.
now was that they put her in a hotel because it wasn't her fault. And so they woke her up about midnight saying that we have a flight, we can bring you to Jamaica. And when she turned up, she was the only one on the plane. And so she had a very interesting experience, but she made it, and she made it right on time. So yeah, and
That's
it was
great.
it was good. It was good having her there, and she's so funny. She's hilarious. She's hilarious. She told us the day after the wedding, she went around Kingston with Winston. So we are thinking, who is Winston? So Winston was apparently a taxi driver that she met. Thank heavens that everything went well. But
Right.
yeah, they came
You
over to
made friends.
Jamaica. She
You
made
made
friends.
friends.
Yeah,
So, what would you say you love about Australia? What do you love about it?
many things. So the first time I came to Australia, I was living on the university accommodation, and I remember one of my she's my friend now, Tegan. She knocked on my door, so she's Australian, and she said to me, welcome to the family. And for me, that was just a welcoming experience, a heartwarming experience, and I really felt a part of the family, because I came around winter, not winter, well, it was winter, yes, now that I think about it, around Easter time, and she invited me to her family home. And then later on in the year, we had Christmas dinner together. We went and we traveled to Asia together. So yeah, it was, and it's just the welcoming nature of the Australian culture. So they're very down to earth. If you're at a bus stop, they'll talk to you as if they know you for a very long time.
Mm.
So I think it just makes you fit in, really.
Good, good. What do you like the least?
Um, the le- it's hard for me to answer the least, because I usually get settled easily wherever I am. But and then funnily, some of my friends, when we talk on WhatsApp, they oftentimes joke with me and say, Australia is very dangerous. And maybe this is what they think that I like the least, because we have snakes, spiders, but I've gotten used to those things. But I think for me, what I like the least is the fact that I cannot find a proper hairdresser. And really, that's really special to me, because and because I have locked hair as well. So usually, you have persons from Africa who can put the extensions in, but doing the locked hair is a very special technique. But
Hmm.
over the years, I've gotten used to doing it myself. So over the years, I've picked up a skill, not to the point where I can open my own hairdresser, but just doing it for myself. So
Oh,
I think that's what I really, really like the least, just not having the access to my own hairdresser that I usually have in Jamaica.
I hear you. That's a good point, in terms of when you're kind of in a totally different culture. Really good point. On that point, let me ask about food. Do you get some of your Jamaican food there, or because you mentioned they're African, yeah,
Mm,
African, and I know in some places there are like these African stores that you can go and
mm.
pick up stuff. So, what about food? Do you find any of your Jamaican foods there?
Yes, you can. You can. And you're right in saying that you will find a majority of these food items in the African shops. I haven't really come across a Jamaican food shop in particular. Most of the items that we get see, and so for example, and from the Asian stores, so you can get like saltfish or codfish from the Asian stores. They call it bacalao, which in their country. But apart from that, you can get the tin aki. Here you can, we made red pea. We make red pea soup, but here they don't call it peas; they call it kidney beans. So you have to go to the store and ask for kidney beans. Um, what else can you get? Pretty much, really, if you just look around and shop, you can find the items that you need. But what we've been doing lately is trying to diversify our
Yeah.
cooking. So just trying new non-Jamaican dishes. So trying new things, and especially during this pandemic, they have recipes all over where you find 5 ingredients meals. And so yeah, but it's good. It's good. Or what you do is get somebody from Jamaica to bring the stuff for you.
Well, that is always a good thing.
But it's problematic though, because the Australia is really strict on bringing in foods, so
Mhm.
they don't particularly like that. So only some items you can get through.
But I'm sure you get your mangoes, not your Jamaican mangoes, but I'm sure you get your mangoes, right?
Here, mangoes in Jamaica, mangoes, they were not my favorite fruit, but no, they are. So everybody in Australia associates me with mango. So if they're buying me a gift, they buy me food, and it's mango. So we don't get the real Jamaican mango, and the way how they do it here, it's so odd to me, because I was just so shocked, because you have the mango and you eat the mango in your hand. No, they cut the mango open and then you slice it, and there's a particular way to do it. While I'm there on the other hand looking odd, eating mango the Jamaican way. But
Uh, so my next question is this one, and maybe you just kind of gave us a clue to this, the way you eat the mango. But you live in this country where there's not a lot of Jamaicans, and an Australian or somebody may have come up to you and realize you're Jamaican. So what's
mhm.
that funny Jamaican moment when somebody realizes, hey, this person is Jamaican? It may be a question they ask, it may be something they say. Tell me, what's that funny Jamaican moment?
I have many of them. I think I'm going to just share a few of them. But I mean, it's funny to me, but it's sort of cliche because it has to do with Bob Marley. But then the story took on a turn. So I'll start. So one day, I was just walking, and a group of tourists from, I think they're either from Japan or China. I don't remember what country, but I remember there was a language barrier. So they apparently they were talking amongst themselves, and apparently they associated, of course, Bob Marley with me, especially because I have the locked hair. So I was there just watching them because I knew it was coming. I'm used to it, but I didn't know what spin it would take this time. And yeah, they walked up to me and they showed me the phone and they said, "Yes, you're related." And I was trying to explain to them that no, I'm not related to Bob Marley. I don't even know him. Um, and they were very adamant, and they asked if they can touch my hair. They asked if they can take pictures with me. So they started, I just gave in. Why not? Let them just enjoy the experience. So they started taking pictures, and then other people started. So it was like a group of tourists. So they started lining up to take pictures with me. So I was there standing for a good time. I know my picture is probably out there somewhere in the internet. Um, but yeah, that was very, very funny to me.
You're like a star, you know. People.
For that one day.
um, what was the biggest adjustment you had to make moving to Australia? What do you think is your one biggest adjustment you had to make?
I think maybe for me was the language, even though when I say the language, I mean the accent. Australia, the official language is English, but there's a very thick accent, especially when you get to what they call the outback, or as we would say in Jamaica, maybe the rural areas. And it was sometimes I even know, even though I'm living here and I'm married to an Australian. Well, Matthew has a very it's Australian accent is refined to me because he's from Sydney. But when you get into the outback, it's very hard to understand. And some people they do speak like that on a regular basis, so you have to ask them to keep on repeating. And it's not only the accent, but even the words. I'm still trying to figure out the words that they use. So, for example, Australians shorten everything. So, for example, they would say um, afternoon would be arvo in Australian. They would call chicken chook. They call barbecue, which is popular here, Barbie. They call the toilet dunny. They said she'll be apples, which mean you'll be all right. And they said they have defo with a F, which means definitely, not to be confused with devo, which means devastated. um and yeah, and they said things like use, which means a plural of you, even though that's not grammatically correct. And when you're on the road driving, they'll say, oh, just do a U-E, which means a U-turn.
That one now sounds like something we would say. That sounds like something you would say in Jamaica. You know, are you? Are you? Are you?
U-E. Yeah, so it's not only the accent, but the accent mixed with the common lingo here.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think it sounds like they have another language they speak based on what you're saying. It's like a totally other language, and it's fun. Indigenous people, I know they're indigenous people
Hmm.
there in Australia. And what's that like? I know you've probably encountered them, hear stories, anything interesting to tell us about the indigenous people in Australia?
Well, in terms of the indigenous, I've only really encountered them on the bus. Unfortunately, there is not still not a large indigenous population within the university
Okay.
setting.
Hmm.
And even though they're offered scholarships, in my opinion, there's still a lot work. There's still a lot more work to be done in terms of integrating them into the university setting. I did have an indigenous student in my class, though, and this is how I got to know a lot about the culture. So he's actually a lecturer at Curtin University. So I teach at Curtin, and he wanted to study psychology, and so he would invite me to what they call a yarning session, which is just imagine a focus group. You're sitting in a circle, but it's a little bit more informal. So they call it yarning. And yeah, he invited me, and it was through there you learned about their different languages, but also different approaches to well-being, different ways of speaking. So rather than saying things like, "Oh, I'm going left or turn left," they would say maybe north north west or north northeast. So they're very good in that regard. So I'm still learning a lot about their culture, because in my line of work, what we do is to develop an online learning platform specifically for students. And
Okay.
so, in keeping with the idea that we want to ensure that the experience is as individualized and as personalized as possible, we want to incorporate, a greater consideration for how children from indigenous background learn.
Okay. Okay. So I have a two-part question, or favorite food from Australia, and
Mm-hmm.
favorite place. Somewhere where you'd say, if I came to Australia, it's a Xavier. You got to check this place out.
I don't think you're going to like my answer for that one. So maybe I'll just start with that one. I would just say the favorite, maybe it's just my favorite place, is just going to the bush. And it sounds odd, but going to the bush and doing things like camping and moving to Australia, I think you get a better appreciation of nature. But usually when I tell my mother these things, she said, "We going to the bush." That don't sound right. But it is a good experience, and they have a lot of hiking trails, and I think just the scenery, the beautiful scenery in Australia. But this is more up north, so anywhere really up north, they have the pinnacles. They have places like Geraldton. So anywhere up north, that's where I would take you to, and that's where I would recommend. But definitely the number one would just be just being in nature.
And there's a lot of, I think a lot of, and I know Australia, New Zealand, a lot of films are, they come over there, and the scenes, because of the scenes they film there. So, you're not, saying the bush or saying may not be too far off.
I'm just using maybe I need to make it a little bit more posh. But this is what Australian would say. They're going to take it to the bush.
And what about food? Favorite food?
If I'm honest, Australia is not known for its cuisine, really. And this is just to my knowledge. But the thing, and many people would probably think I would eat kangaroo. I have. So my mother-in-law did cook it once for me. But I don't like the texture of the kangaroo. It's a bit too chewy. And it's just odd. For me, it's just odd to be eating a kangaroo. I said I would try just to say. I don't like to say I don't like something without doing it. And
Right.
I've done it, and I don't enjoy it, but perhaps you would. So if you do come to Australia, I would suggest you try it. But I do like the diversity. So, the diversity of the Australian culture. So we have different types of cuisine. So what I particularly like is the Korean barbecue.
Okay. So my final question, actually, I got one more, but before I get to that one, what do you miss the most about Jamaica?
I miss my family, but I've been away from Jamaica for quite some time, so I've gotten used to that. And plus, we're in the age of technology, so I am used to talking to them through technology. But for me, I think what I miss the most is just having access to authentically Jamaican food. And I don't mean the food that you can cook at home, but you just want to go out sometime and you just buy the food. So I miss that. And I miss things that you can't get here, like guinep. So in Jamaica, guinep is just my favorite. And you cannot get guinep here. And the last time I had guinep was probably in 2013. That's the last time I had guinep.
Wow.
Because I've never been to Jamaica during the guinep season since then. I've been to Jamaica before, January, but I've not. And this year was my opportunity to have guinep because I was coming to Jamaica in July, but that didn't work out. And we've been working on our way to try to get it here. But again, I told you that Australia is very strict on the incoming food.
Right.
So maybe I'll just have to wait until next year.
So my final question is this: what advice would you give a Jamaican or anyone that is moving to Australia? What advice would you give them?
Well, on the funnier side of things, when they come here, maybe this was just my perception, maybe it's just me, but I thought when I came here that I would just be seeing kangaroos jumping around. That's not the case. People do ask me that, and they actually have a fear because they're thinking, how am I going to operate with walking on the road with seeing the kangaroo? That doesn't happen here, in the city at least. But when you go into the bush or in the more rural areas, you can see the kangaroos. I must tell you, maybe Australians will be upset with me, but I must tell people coming to Australia, they always do this to international people. They tell international people that they should walk around and look up in the trees because there are drop bears here, meaning a bear is going to drop on you. There's no such thing. That's just an Australian myth or a joke for international students. But on a more serious note, though, it depends on the reason why you're coming to Australia. So, for example, I came for educational purposes. So, because the cost of living in Australia is really high, I would suggest if you're coming to study, try to obtain a scholarship. Australia has many scholarships for international students. In particular, there's an Australian Postgraduate Award or the Endeavour Award that's awarded to specifically for international students. But the local universities, they do have scholarship packages for students. So I would recommend taking advantage of that. And just researching the best universities. So I went to Curtin, so I'm only able to speak with confidence about the experience there. I've heard that the other universities are equally good, but I wouldn't be speaking from a place of knowledge. So do your own research, but I can vouch for Curtin University.
Good.
And but if you're coming for work purposes, that's also important as well. But I would suggest that an easy transition here is to look at the list that Australia currently they have a list with the top maybe 100, maybe top 50. They call it a skill migration list. So if you're wanting to migrate here, you look at that list and you determine whether or not one of your occupation fits within that list, because you're more likely to receive a visa. But even if you don't want to move here and you just want to come for working opportunities, it would still be useful to look at the list because at least you know the skilled occupations that Australia is currently seeking.
Okay. Well, Samantha-Kaye, thank you for staying up with us. And, I wish you all the success in the world. You and I will see each other online like we typically do. And
Yes.
I hope you get your Guinea. I hope the ever event you're going to in Jamaica is moved to Guinea season so that you can get your Guinea.
Well, if I'm sure Jamaicans are watching now, so I'm making this public service announcement, even that we can get into a deal of how I'm going to get the Guinea. Feel free to reach out to me.
Well, Samantha-Kaye, listen, thanks again for joining us, and you have a great day and blessings to you and your family.
Thank you so much, Xavier. Same to you.
Show us some love now. Hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss a video.